Yeah, we can go ahead. Start करो.
We are live. Rahul.
इनकी तुम्हारी आवाज नहीं आ रही है.
पिंकी की
राहुल,
आवाज
क्या
आ
हम
रही है
live हैं?
राहुल?
Yes, yes. Go ahead. I
Okay.
said.
मेरी आवाज आ रही है?
अभी फिर नहीं आ रही है तुम्हारी आवाज.
आ रही है आवाज पिंकी.
We
You
can hear
audible to
her
me?
actually.
अभी ठीक है. चलो.
Let's start.
There is sound issue, Pinky, तुम्हारे तो.
Yes, Pinky, you can begin. You are audible.
Yes, Rahul, I think you have some issue at your end. She is perfectly audible.
Good morning to everyone present live on YouTube. I would also like to everyone on behalf of Professor Pooja Ghosh, RCI coordinator, who is also a national co-coordinator of Unnat Bharat Abhiyan. As you may all know, that lifestyle for environment is one of the important discussion theme in all three tracks of the G20 process. Through the webinar series, we are privileged to have dialogues with living Udaharans of life, which one of the engagement program of G20 and C20. It is our pleasure to have with us today Professor Sangeeta Kohli ma'am and Professor Ravi sir from Department of Mechanical Engineering, IIT Delhi. Professor Sangeeta Kohli ma'am is also a PI coordinator.
Sorry to interrupt, Pinky, your voice is still not clear to us.
Everybody is listening to me or not? Am I audible or not?
See, in this meeting, I can hear you clearly. Maybe at the YouTube end, there is some issue. I think Rahul is the only one who's complaining about it.
So if it is clear to you, sir, then perfect.
Okay, it is our
Perfectly
pleasure
okay.
to have with us today Professor Sangeeta Kohli ma'am and Professor Ravi sir from Department of Mechanical Engineering, IIT Delhi. Professor Sangeeta Kohli ma'am is also a PI coordinator, Khurrampur Cluster, RCI, IIT Delhi. They both will share their experiences on lifestyle for environment. So we are honored to have you both, sir and ma'am. Thank you so much for joining with us. And now we would like to hear more about your environment-friendly lifestyle. Over to you, ma'am and sir. Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you, Pinky, for the nice introduction. So we would like to start with a disclaimer. In fact, like many other people, we are also actually quite concerned about the way in which human beings are affecting the environment. And right from quite early years of our marriage, we have actually been trying to lead a lifestyle in which we hurt the environment to the least extent possible. So there was no intention from either of our sides to be a Udaharan to anybody in that sense of the word. So thanks to Unnat Bharat Abhiyan for recognizing us to be living examples in environment-friendly lifestyle. In fact, yes, there was a little bit of an intention to at least show an example to our students that it is possible to lead a lifestyle which is environment-friendly and reasonably simple. And that is the only intention that we have otherwise had. Sangeeta and myself, if Sangeeta would like to add something to that.
Yeah. And also it's basically a lifelong effort. We cannot say that our lifestyle is 100% sustainable and eco-friendly. We are trying whatever we can under the constraints that we have. So, and we are definitely not keeping ourselves on any pedestal. We just want to share whatever efforts we have made, whatever experiences we have had in our efforts or in our attempt to lead an eco-friendly life with others, if it helps them to try the same thing at their level.
Yeah. So talking a little bit more about the constraints that Sangeeta was mentioning. We both live in a city. We live in Delhi, South Delhi, the place where you can least expect, to be in a nature-centric, eco-friendly kind of lifestyle. But fortunately, thanks to IIT Delhi campus, which is an oasis in the middle of South Delhi, we have been able to practice some of what we have been practicing, and we'll just share with you about that. So let me share the screen before we start. Is the screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we titled the talk as Choosing to Care for the Environment. So basically, a lot has to do with the choices we make in our day-to-day lives. So if we make those choices such that we care for the environment, then our lifestyle becomes more environment friendly than otherwise. So the ways in which mankind is hurting the environment are primarily, in two aspects. One aspect is the materialistic tendencies and consumerism with which we are actually hurting the ecological environment, the planet around us. It's a spaceship with limited resources, and our economic models basically talk about infinite growth, right? So every economy has to grow at something like 6 to 8% a year. What does the growth of economy mean? The growth of economy means we spend the natural resources at that much rate higher. So because the only income that we have is from the nature. And so if our income is increasing, or our GDP is increasing, our production, national domestic product, national product is increasing at 7 or 8%, we are basically consuming our resources at that much higher rate. So our economic model is quite interesting, that our wealth is measured by how much we spend rather than how much we earn. Normally, in the common parlance, a person is known to be rich if his income or her income is high. Whereas in economic parlance, it is rich if somebody is spending more. Okay, so that's a very counterintuitive thought process, but economics these days is the fifth Veda that we have today. The first four Vedas have completely been forgotten. The fifth one only is being talked about and remembered. So basically, the materialistic tendencies, what it says is you should promote a culture of consumerism. The more we consume, the higher the buoyancy of the economy. The economy is better if the people are able to buy more. So this is basically the materialistic tendencies, and all of us succumb to that. And what is the natural outcome of that? The natural outcome of that is we take more and more natural resources, spend more and more energy, which also comes from the fossil resources, which are dwindling, and then eventually produce more and more products and put them in the market so that we have a lot of choice. So then when you go to the market, if you want to buy a perfume, you'll have 55 different perfumes in a small shop. If you go to a supermarket, then you'll have 550, and you have to just pick the best out of those for you and then bring them over. So this is what we call as consumerism. So if I want to buy one bottle of perfume, there needs to be 550 bottles of perfume in the store. And that's what is our display of economic prosperity. So that hurts the environment substantially. And this is something that we are realizing, and at least in our own lifestyles, we are trying to make ourselves less consumeristic as compared to what is being recommended by the economy. So this is one point. The second aspect of it is, it's actually the flip side of the same thing. This consumeristic tendency or the materialism actually values money more than anything else. So the rich are valued more than the poor. So the rich are more important in the society than poor people. they have more power, they have more decision-making authority, and therefore they make their own decisions. In fact, the decisions that the government make is basically prompted by the industry. The industry is owned by rich people, and therefore the rich decide for the rich, and poor people are always left behind. What then happens is inequity. There is a major disparity between the income levels of the rich and the poor. The rich get richer, the poor remain where they are, and therefore, because their purchasing power goes on decreasing, because the money value decreases, so they are not able to buy as much or fend for themselves in a day-to-day this one. So the rich take it all. All the cakes are taken by the rich, and the poor keep sitting and watching. So the inequity is a fallout of materialism, and basically we are trying to see if we can contribute to mitigating both of these things. Sangeeta.
Actually, a lot of thinkers, starting from the early 70s, in fact, maybe
In fact,
even before
Gandhiji.
that, Gandhiji, of course, was the a very, very prominent proponent of simple lifestyle and completely against consumerism. And following his thought process, there have been several thinkers, in the modern era as well. Even today, we find so many videos, so many articles talking about the negative fallout of the consumeristic tendencies that the world at large is following. The worldview of materialism is something which is actually taking us towards ecological disaster. And one thing which has been pointed out by several people is that this is a finite planet, and we cannot think in terms of infinite growth in either the growth of the society or infinite growth in living standards. That is, you keep on improving your living standards without a limit, without having a very severe problem on this planet, because it's a finite planet. So this is something which has been recognized by many people, and it basically struck us hard many years ago. And we thought that at least, is it possible for us to start doing something at our level in our small way before we start talking about it to other people? So whatever we are going to discuss today is basically the kind of experiments we have done, small experiments, small efforts that we have made in our life in this direction.
So how can we contribute to the mitigation of this environment damage or the environment hurt that as a human society we are causing? So there are a few points that we basically wanted to cover in today's interaction. So conscious consumption is the first of them. The energy footprint is the second of them, and it being our also area of research interest, we'll be talking a lot more about that than other topics that we are going to study. Resource conservation is the third one, waste management is the fourth, and caring for the social environment is the fifth one. These are the 5 points in which we have organized today's talk.
Yeah, there can be many more ways, but this is the ambit of our efforts and our talk.
So talking about conscious consumption, the first thing that we talk about is, do we need to buy it? So the advertisements basically tell you the opposite. The advertisements basically tell you, irrespective of whether you have thought about or seen a particular product or not, they try hard to convince you that, so look, this is a thing that you always needed and you never knew about it, so you should buy it.
And it'll be a source of happiness.
Yes, it will be a source of your happiness. It will be a source of your enjoyment. It will be a source of your power and superiority over others. Look, if you own this particular phone, then you can flaunt it to others, saying that, look, I have a better phone than you. So this is the kind of mentality that is promoted by today's advertisements. And quite frequently, the whole belief system has now fallen in that direction. We tend to believe. So it's as if somebody has been telling you that you are a donkey. You cannot think you are a donkey. And it has been told to us 500 times over every day, and then for 500 days in a stretch, that we started believing that we are donkeys. That's exactly what the advertisements have done to us. The advertisements have already made us convinced that owning a most expensive phone or a particular brand of phone or a particular brand of wearing a particular brand of clothes actually makes us superior to others, right? It does not. In fact, it's only the advertisement that is saying that, but we have started believing it and started wearing those clothes and showing to other people, and the people around us, because they also see those advertisements, they also believe that because you're wearing these clothes, you're superior to me, right? So then they feel inferior, they go and buy the same brand, and that is exactly the trick that the advertisements play. So now we take one step back and start thinking, whenever we are trying to buy something, do we really need it? So if you start looking at need, there is a big gap between what we need and what we want. The need and a want are really huge things. And if you are able to at least pause for a moment and think, is it really a need or a necessity? Then we would not stuff our cupboards with clothes which we never see or never wear in a year. All we need is about 8 to 10 pairs of clothes, and we should be able to make do with a sufficient variety with the permutations and combinations that we can wear with them. So you don't need 500 clothes to be stuffed in your wardrobe where you can't even see where the cloth that you are looking for is, right? So the thing that we are actually trying to practice is whether or not we need to buy something that we intend to buy at any given point in time.
That also includes when we decide to give gifts to our near and dear ones. We try to make a conscious choice of what kind of gifts should we give to them. So more often than not, we do not give gifts which are just expensive gadgets or a very expensive piece of uh, something which can have only an ornamental value. So we do try to identify um, uh, some value associated with the gift that we give. For example, if we are giving a necklace to a friend, then maybe that necklace will be made by children who are handicapped. Maybe it will be made out of waste products. So something which will be commensurate with the kind of value systems that we want to carry and we want to propagate. So that is how we make choices.
Yeah, so that brings us to the next question. If we have to buy, then how do I choose what to buy? Right? So, for example, we talked about clothes. So, buying clothes can be bought from the most popular brand, which is advertising, saying that these clothes are the trend, and if you wear them, then people respect you. We don't want people to respect us for the clothes that we are wearing. People should respect us for what we are, right? So we actually can choose. Yes, we need clothes to wear. So what is a good choice of place to buy it from? Can we buy it, for example, from a khadi outlet, where actually people from the downtrodden communities are making them, and by buying from there, we actually contribute to their income and livelihood. That's a legitimate choice that we assume is possible.
Yes, so this is essentially along the lines of what I said even about the gifts. So there are so many different ways in which we can purchase things. So what we are saying uh, is not that we should completely live as recluses and not have not purchase things other than our very basic needs at all. But when we buy them, is it possible for us to consider the angle of contribution to the rest of the society also in mind, and being as eco-friendly as possible in mind? So this is how we try to make decisions.
So we'll actually be talking about more such choices as we go on in the talk. So I hope we have made our points. So the two things that we talk about in conscious consumption, one is being conscious of whether to buy or not. And when we actually have to buy, being conscious of the choice we make of what to buy in such a way so that we are giving back to the society in which we are living. So these are the two things that we wanted to talk about in conscious consumption. Then we'll come to our favorite topic of energy. the energy footprint. So the first thing that we actually talk about is to minimize the use of energy intensive equipment or systems, that is systems that consume a lot of energy. Do we really need them, and do we really need to use them? Some of the examples that are coming to our mind, we have just listed here. One is actually the most yeah, so the most controversial, if you would like, topic of private transport versus shared or public transport. Beyond a certain income level, people, at least that I have seen around me in Delhi, and now it is increasingly elsewhere as well, believe that it is below dignity to go in public transport. So they should own a transport of their own. They should have a car. They should have at least a two-wheeler, even if a person is low-income person, cannot afford a four-wheeler, at least a two-wheeler, because it's comfortable, it's convenient, right? So I should have my own private transport. A choice between this with shared transport, which is like, for example, taxis, auto rickshaws, the various other modes of hired transport, or public transport. So now we have been faculty members at IIT starting from 1993-94 and until today. So it's almost a period of 30 years that we have spent as professors, assistant associate or professors at IIT system. So, and according to the society, this is a very coveted position, and therefore people who are here should, live a certain standard of life, right? That's what the society tells us. And this is something that we have faced also. So we decided that, living in a campus like IIT, where the places where we have to move around are all walkable distance. One end of the campus to the other end of the campus is 2 kilometers. So it's easily walkable. And if you want to get there quickly, okay, let us have a bicycle. The campus is a reasonably safe riding place for bicycles. So why don't we just use bicycles to move from place to place? And whenever we have to go out into the city, we have to go to various places, just hire a cab and go. Number one, it has always made economic sense to us that we don't need to maintain a car, pay the road tax, pay the maintenance, pay the annual servicing, and pay the various things that the thing is for, including the fuel cost. Rather than do that, every time we go out, we just call a cab wala or a taxi wala and then ride in the taxi. We felt there are two advantages that we get out of it. One is that we don't need to maintain a tin pot that stands in front of our house, however gleaming or shining it might be, and be a source of our pride. We probably are missing out on that pride, but we are actually proud on another context that we are at least not contributing to that junk going into the environment once the life of that tin pot is over. But we are just using a shared transport in which we are actually contributing to the livelihood of a person who drives that. The driver of the taxi earns something from us. Wherever possible, and now Delhi being a city connected by metro beautifully, it always makes more sense to travel by metro than to drive on the congested Delhi roads to get to far distances in short periods of time. So we found travel by metro a very honorable and very, relaxing way of traveling in the city. So this is something that we have opted for ourselves. And in the 30 years that we have spent as faculty members at IIT, except for some remarks, number one, from our relatives saying that, being what you are, you should not be, without a car, or you should not be riding a bicycle in your campus. अच्छा नहीं लगता. ये हमारे रिलेटिव्स ने कहा, हमारे सबऑर्डिनेट स्टाफ ने कहा कि सर हम गाड़ी लेके आ रहे हैं, आप साइकिल पे आ रहे हैं, हमको अच्छा नहीं लगता. अच्छा नहीं लगता तो आप भी साइकिल पे आओ. But this is something which we have heard from our people. But for that, we have never had any experience in which we regretted this decision not to go for a powered transport of our own.
Yes, and more importantly than not, we have seen that most of the decisions that people make, they are essentially in the name of convenience. And that convenience we need to define for ourselves. So, and also at the same time, many people realize that essentially giving convenience more and more importance is also counterproductive to our own health. If we start doing, exerting manually much less, then it's our body which is essentially telling us that something is wrong. So, using a mode of transport like a bicycle within the campus has been very helpful to keep our knees running, to keep our bodies little more fit than probably we would have been able to if we had used a powered vehicle all the time. And what one thing more that we find is, once you have a powered vehicle, then even for a short distance like half a kilometer, people have the tendency to use it. And in fact, we also found that it was very helpful for our son to get ready for school in time, because he knew that if he missed the bus, we will not be able to drop him at school in a car. So he had to make sure that he doesn't miss the bus. So those kinds of little things which added to the discipline on a day-to-day basis have been, some kind of positive fallouts of the decisions that we made.
Yeah. So the couple of things that we wanted to share with you was about the choice between train travel and air travel. Many people that are around us used to tell us, why are you wasting time? My native place is Coimbatore, which is about 40 hours by train from Delhi. So people would say, if you can just get into a plane and reach there in 2.5, 3 hours, why are you wasting 2 days traveling by train? But in fact, it has been quite an interesting thing that all three of us, our son and the two of us, have always made these train travels into a family time. These are the times where the family is together without being disturbed by any other factors. Don't need to run to office for any work, or you don't need to go anywhere else to do any other chore. We are all there for each other. So just eat together, sleep together, chat together, doing things together for 48 hours at a stretch. This has been the most productive quality family time that we have ever had whenever we had to travel. So it used to be an annual affair to go to my native town from Delhi, and going with family every year. We always enjoyed the 40 hours of travel one way and 40 hours of travel the other way. We never found that those 40 hours are a waste of time. We always thought it's a wonderful investment that we are able to make. Right? So it is not because we cannot afford more expensive transport, but it is simply because we consciously choose that, because we value that but a lot more. Similarly, bicycle versus powered transport, Sangeeta just talked about. In fact, over the 30 years, even if you say we traveled 2 kilometers per day by cycle, in a year, 360 days, that becomes something like 700, 800 kilometers. And in 30 years, that comes to so many thousand kilometers. We have cycled that much. So much so that we never had to take our car, go to Lodi Garden and go for a walk. Right? So it saves both ways. And the third thing that I wanted to talk about is an anecdote inside the campus. In our campus, we have 17 rickshaws. 10 of them are powered by battery, and 7 of them are pedal rickshaws. And our students, because they are always late, they want to get into the faster mode of transport. They always prefer the powered rickshaws to the pedal rickshaws. And the rickshawalas who are manning the pedal rickshaws earn much less in the day as compared to the people who are manning the powered rickshaws. And they are amongst themselves doing a rotation, so that their income levels, they are actually able to make their ends meet. This is something that I always found quite a insensitive thing for us to do as a community of campus. When we don't look at what the other person needs, but we always look at what my thing is, and my weakness usually prevails. Because my class is at 8 o'clock, I get ready in the hostel at 8:05. I need to get to the classroom before 8:15 so that the teacher doesn't make nasty remarks. Up to 8:15, the teachers don't make nasty remarks these days. They're used to it, right? So I choose the powered rickshaw and go, because it gets to the lecture hall complex 2 minutes earlier than the pedal rickshaw. So this is something which, so we can see the way in which we make our choices completely blindly and unconsciously. And a little bit of human consciousness can actually take us much further. The second device that we wanted to talk about is the air conditioner, which is again a big controversial thing in our circles, in particularly Delhi kind of places, and it's increasingly in other kinds of places also. So in that context, we basically wanted to share this, that comfort is actually a habit. We can train our body to be comfortable at high temperatures or at lower temperatures. It's our possibility. In fact, there was an experiment done. It's a very popular publication that's available. People did a psychological experiment of comfort conditions because people wanted to know at what temperatures are human beings comfortable. So they had air-conditioned rooms with temperatures maintained, and they did experiments on human beings. So what they did was they maintained the temperatures at 24 degrees Celsius. Okay? And on the display, they wrote 28 degrees Celsius or 27 degrees Celsius. So they found that a lot of people were actually sweating, getting tired. They were actually feeling uncomfortable in that 24 degrees Celsius air conditioner because they saw that the temperatures are at 28 degrees Celsius in the display. The same 24 degrees Celsius maintained, and the display was 22 degrees Celsius or 21 degrees Celsius. Some people started feeling cold and others were very comfortable. So this is something which is a documented research that was done. So we know that the body and the mind get conditioned with the kind of temperatures that we actually live in. And if we are able to live comfortably at 28, 29 degrees Celsius, which is not actually scorching temperature, which is actually a comfortable temperature in the tropics, if we are able to live at that temperature rather than at 22 degrees Celsius, which is the comfort condition actually derived for cold countries because they are bringing the temperature up from 5 degrees Celsius or 4 degrees Celsius or minus 5 degrees Celsius to 22. So for us, the closer point for comfort is actually 27 or 28 degrees Celsius. And if you are able to maintain that, I have found maintaining a temperature of 27, 28 degrees Celsius in an air-conditioned room or just switching off the air conditioner when the temperature is around that value makes me very comfortable at work. There is a little bit of sweat that's there, and that's natural. If we don't want to sweat, that's actually very unhuman to think of. Actually, that is something which is, the human body actually has its own temperature regulation mechanisms, and let it work. Why are we not allowing it to work? We don't want to sweat. We don't want any odors of sweat in our body or clothes. And therefore, we would like to keep the temperatures low and clothe ourselves like the Westerners, coat, suit, all of that, very warm, and stay in summer at the temperature of 45 degrees Celsius outside. This is a complete waste of energy that we typically do. So basically, on one hand, it is psychological. Second, these days, the railways and the airlines, you might have already experienced this. Some years back, if you're traveling on a Rajdhani Express or a Shatabdi Express, you always needed a blanket or a shawl with you so that you remain comfortable. Otherwise, after about a couple of hours of travel, you start shivering, right? But now, these days, the temperatures are much more comfortable. You are able to stay without those things. And even to sleep at night, you don't need a blanket on, although they give you in Rajdhani Expresses. You don't need them. Similarly, in airlines also, you used to feel quite cold in the airlines, and normally you needed a shawl, and normally you had to ask the air hostess for a shawl or take out your own shawl. But these days they set temperatures much higher because they have figured out that the energy spent on air conditioning is substantially reduced when you take the temperatures up. So that is a thing that they have done, particularly in railways, not in airways because it's flying at much higher altitudes, so the equations are very different there. But in railways, the amount of energy spent on air conditioning is reduced to almost half or less if you're maintaining a temperature of 25 or 26 in place of 21 or 22.
We did a couple of experiments at home to see whether it is possible for us to live without an air conditioner. We bought coolers, which window coolers basically, and we found that on the first floor, we live in a display type of house, and first floor is definitely much hotter than the ground floor. And most of the time we are not at home when we are at work, but when Ravi's parents are there, they are spending the whole day at home, so they need to be in a comfortable environment. We found that if we keep the cooler on, if we sleep on the first floor, it is much hotter, and instead if we sleep on the ground floor itself and keep the window cooler on the whole night, that helps in keeping the room cool throughout the day, the next day. So we don't even need to switch on the cooler during the daytime at all. So just having the cooler on at night is sufficient. And what we found was that while these desert coolers basically work only in hot and dry climate, when the weather becomes little more humid, then it is sufficient for us to have a lot of circulation. So even at night, we keep the fan on without using the water pump, and that helps in keeping the environment much more comfortable than otherwise. And even for the daytime, in humid climate, we have a couple of pedestal fans which keep the environment much more comfortable when the desert cooler doesn't work. So these experiments have really helped us keep the energy requirement at bare minimum, even in the hottest of the climates. So in winter also, we completely avoid the use of room heaters. So both avoiding the use of air conditioners and room heaters, air conditioners in summer and room heaters in winter, has helped us a lot in avoiding thermal shocks. Because we have seen that many of our colleagues in family circles and friends and relatives, they do fall sick very often when they go out from a very cold air conditioned environment outside, or when they are used to staying in a heated room most of the time, and when they have to step out of that in colder climate. So the body is able to adjust itself much better if we are not subjecting it to the extreme. So essentially, we don't make it over comfortable in either of the environments, either of the seasons. The body is also able to keep more fit. This is something that we have experienced.
In fact, what we forget is that the body is better designed than most air conditioners that we ever knew of, right? And it's able to adjust itself to the variations in ambient temperature. Then it doesn't need to be kept in an incubator all the time in winter and kept in a cold fridge all the time in summer. It can be kept in a temperature, because at least places like Delhi and if we move down south, the temperatures are a lot more even from the day to night. But in the north, when the temperatures from summer to winter are substantially different, even there, clothe yourself well in winter and clothe yourself well ventilated in summer, then we are able to live without the need for human-made comfort conditions, but for most of the time.
One more thing which I would like to add is that we keep hearing from more and more colleagues and families of our relatives that it is so difficult to live without an AC. I think this statement is essentially coming from the upper strata of the society. Let's look at the percentage of people who can afford to be in an AC environment. When we are sitting in an air conditioned room, let's see how many people are out in the open at work, in the heat and in the cold. In fact, very recently, we had given some carpentry work and some furniture repair work to some people, and they were just sitting outside under the shade of the tree. And even though we are offered to them that they can come inside and do the work, they said no, they are very comfortable under the tree and there is no problem at all. Whereas in the same conditions will be labeled as very, very hot for most of us. So I think it's a lot to do with the mindset and letting our bodies get accustomed to something which is more moderate.
Yeah. So basically, these are the points that we said, that being from tropical climate, our bodies are built to be comfortable when it is warm. Warm meaning 30 degrees Celsius, around that temperature. And the choice of clothing that we make in winter and in summer matters a lot for the kind of temperatures that we need to maintain around
So
us.
we have spent a lot of time talking about air conditioning because it's well known that space conditioning takes huge amount of energy. The percentage of energy which is consumed by space conditioning is phenomenal,
So
phenomenally
the
high.
power requirements of cities, for example, like Delhi, shoot through 7,000 megawatts during peak hours in summer days or monsoon days, simply because of the air conditioning load going up. And similarly, the private transport and public transport, the number of vehicles on the road and the cost of petroleum for the country's exchequer is a very clear thing. So these two things we spent a lot of time on, because if we are able to convince even a few more people, the difference is going to be definitely significant. Minimizing use of energy intensive equipment. We also wanted to talk about cooking. So I'll hand it over to Sangeeta. It's her forte. So she has to talk about it.
So it doesn't mean that Ravi doesn't help in cooking. So we are also partners in cooking. So essentially, we have made a very conscious choice not to go for any electrical gadgets, because being thermal engineers, we have been taught right from our undergraduate days that using electricity for heating is something which is definitely not the best option considering the second law of thermodynamics. So from that point of view, we find that even if we say that the electrical gadgets that we use are 100% efficient, they are not going to give us the overall efficiency of more than 20-25% because of all the losses that are happening in production of the electricity from the fuel and also the transportation and many other losses.
Yeah. So a typical average power plant efficiency in this country is about 35%. And the transmission and distribution losses typically account for about 20 to 25% in most places. So which basically means that only 75% of the 35, which is like about 27%, is the efficiency at which the energy reaches your house, which basically means for every 100 units of fuel burned, the energy coming out from fuel burned, you're only getting 27 units of energy in your house, right? And then if your electrical cook stove is 100% efficient, then you're using 27% of the fuel energy for cooking. If I use a gas stove, I know a gas stove is typically anywhere between 40 to 60% efficient, depending on what kind of vessel, what kind of things that I use. We are going to talk about that. So 40 to 60% is definitely almost double what we can get from electric cooking, even if the induction stove or microwave cooker is 100% efficient.
And this does not have any limitation of second law. If we want to increase efficiency, we can even increase it further. So apart from that, we have also been very conscious in trying to adopt efficient cooking practices to the extent possible. Like one of the things is that we find most people have this tendency of cooking at a very high flame because there is a feeling that we are in a hurry and we need to do things fast. And so high flame will give us more power, and same thing will get cooked at in much less time. On the other hand, we find that the price that we pay at high flame in terms of loss of efficiency is very, very significant. And many a times we also question ourselves whether the time constraint that we are talking about, is it also associated with lack of proper planning? For example, and many a times we notice that if I want to cook food, suppose let's say I want to boil potatoes, I cannot boil potatoes in 2 minutes. It will take some time. The amount of time that cooking needs chemical reactions to happen, the kinds of changes which are required in the potato to happen, that the time is required. So I may make my flame very, very high and the water may start boiling very fast. but the potato will not get cooked unless it is given the amount of time that it needs. In fact, what we found was that accordingly, if we use a slower flame, so that the rate at which the water is getting heated is commensurate with the rate at which the heat can be transmitted from the surface of the potato to the inside, the potato gets cooked in around the same time, but at a much less with much less energy. So these are the experiments that we have done at home. Particularly, we found that when in our campus, the LPG was replaced with piped gas, they changed only the nozzles for only one burner. We had another second burner for which the nozzle was not changed. They said you can change it at your level. So the third burner, which is a single burner, it has, so it is getting piped natural gas, but it is basically having a nozzle which is still corresponding to LPG. Because of the difference in the properties of LPG and natural gas, the rate at which the natural gas is able to flow through the LPG nozzle is very, very small. So that burner burns very slowly. And we find that the amount of time that in which I want to boil potatoes will be the same if I keep it on that gas with much less power. So overall, we have done several experiments to see that the slow flame is much more efficient. And this is, of course, something that we also know from our own professional understanding that of the basic heat transfer, that slow flame is reducing the losses to a large extent. Similarly, we try to make sure that whenever we want to heat water, cook something, we use covers so that we don't lose heat unnecessarily. We have also used solar cookers for a very long time. In fact, for almost 15 years, we were using a solar cooker, which essentially when of course we could use it only off and on whenever the sun was good, but we used to keep things in the morning, and by afternoon when we went home for lunch, many things would be ready. Unfortunately, when our old cooker gave way, we were not able to find a good solar cooker, the box type solar cooker, which could perform as well. The construction was substandard, the materials were substandard. So overall, we have not been able to fix that problem. Of course, we also have not spent that much time because now we have more constraints at home. We are not able to
continue using the solar
yes,
cookers.
yes, for some reason. But for those who can experiment with it, this is an excellent option to reduce the gas consumption.
Yeah, particularly for working couples who go to work in the morning and come back in the afternoon for lunch. You just leave it in the sun and go, and then in 2-3 hours, the cooking is beautifully done. And in fact, the taste is much better when it is slow cooked in the solar cooker.
And of course, we also use pressure cookers regularly.
Yeah. So, like Sangeeta already hinted, our professional and research focus is also on energy efficiency, and we have consciously chosen problems that are relevant to rural applications. Actually, both of us work together on cook stoves. We work together on biomass gasification, and we work together on energy efficiency improvement for rural industries and micro, small and medium industries. In fact, we work mostly at micro level rather than small and medium industries levels. We have been seeing that the work that has been done at those scales and those levels have been very small. Economies of scale have prompted all the investment to be made into large systems and systems that would cater to major industries and maybe medium and large industries, but not for micro and small industries or rural industries. And so much of our research focus is on energy systems and devices that are useful for those, because we have been working on pottery kilns, we have been working on various furnaces that are used by craftsmen and artisans. We have been working with small sized basically gasification systems, cook stoves, all of those things in very small size, maybe of a few kilowatts range. which is where not too much of inputs have gone into in terms of research. And we have also been working on product development and some level of dissemination at cover level, which we could do. Move on to the next topic of resource conservation. We all are conscious that we need to conserve natural resources that are bestowed on us. In fact, much of the time, the modern process is to give the people a feeling of abundance. So turn the knob and you'll get water. Switch it on and you'll get electricity. So it's as if there is an infinite supply at the back, and just a small act of yours will give you. So which actually makes the people assume that there is infinite resources, whereas actually we know Delhi gets less than what is required by the number of people that live in Delhi, the quantity of water. Say, for example, on an average, if I say a normal human being requires 200 liters of water in a day, all told, all requirements, washing, bathing, washing clothes, washing dishes, uh, all kinds of applications. It's about 200 liters in a day. And the Delhi's population, city's population is like 1.5 to 2 crores. The amount of water that comes into Delhi as water supply doesn't that. It's not enough. We are actually much short of that. But we give us an idea of abundance and make people consume too much. So actually, what that results in is children or youngsters, when they want to have a bath, they would like to have a shower at a very high pressure. So go to the bathroom, turn the water on at full pressure, and stay there for as long as they can. That's enjoyable shower. The amount of water that's wasted in that, in comparison with what we can use a bucket and mug, is substantial. What you can do is to have a bath in about 10 to 15 liters of water. The shower makes you have 50 to 100 liters of water, which is a huge amount of water wastage. Similarly, the point that we actually have been telling many people is don't use RO, because actually in the cities now, the water is mostly sourced, supplementary water is sourced from the underground sources. So the water becomes brackish and hard, and people would like to remove the brackishness. So they reverse osmosis. What reverse osmosis does is to basically remove the dissolved salts from the water and gives you water which is free of minerals, right? Which is not healthy. The body requires a minimum amount of minerals to be healthy. And secondly, in order to remove that, the process of reverse osmosis actually has two bodies of water and migrates the salt from one body to the other, so that this becomes purified and the other body becomes brackish, more brackish. And this brackish water has to be discarded because it cannot be used. It's actually a waste. So for every liter of water that we consume, there is a certain liters of water, depending on the extent of brackishness of the original water, we throw away from anywhere from 1/3 to half of the water quantity that we consume. So if we consume about 30 liters of water to drink in a day, we are actually throwing away at least 10 to 15 liters of water, and that too very brackish water, which is not even fit for irrigating your garden or anything of that kind. So it's a huge amount of waste of water, which can be prevented if you can tolerate a little bit of brackishness in the water. Little bit of brackishness doesn't damage our health, but at the same time gives you the supply of minerals that is required for the body supply. Most city supplies of water are not as brackish as you need to use a reverse osmosis, or you need to buy water from Bisleri or any such companies which use reverse osmosis to clean up their water. It's a very wasteful process, and we have been actually advocating against the use of RO wherever we can. In our own home, we still have the good old UV and the candle filter with the activated carbon to remove all the impurities that we need to remove and get a clean water. The other option is about the cisterns that we use. The flush is a huge source of water wastage, and we need to have cisterns that can be flushed with the minimal quantity of water. For example, just go for urination into a toilet. The amount of water that we throw into it, if it's a Western toilet, is huge. If it is an Indian toilet, it takes less. And even better designed Indian toilets, like the ones that were designed by Sulabh International or companies that researched on using designing toilets for minimal water consumption, consume very little water for flushing, particularly after urination. So the quantity of water required in cisterns and the flushes is another matter that we need to keep in our mind, because if there are 4 people in a house and then each of them uses the toilet 5 to 6 times in a day, the amount of water that gets thrown, that to clean water that gets thrown into the sewer, is a huge quantity. The reuse of grey water is another thing that we have been advocating, and we wanted to have it tried, but it's a little bit more effort ridden and complicated. The water that we are using for example, our bath or dishwashing in the kitchen need not be thrown into the sewer. This water can actually easily be clarified and used for watering the garden. This is something that will save a lot of amount of water wastage, and also sewers actually get over flooded during rainy seasons, for example, because all the rainwater is thrown into the sewer, which is a major colossal waste. That, because the rainwater has to percolate into the ground to enrich your groundwater, it just runs away into the sewer and then eventually runs away into the river, and causing a lot of issues. So reuse of used water or grey water is something that we try to practice to the extent we can. For example, we bring vegetables from the market, we wash it in small tubs of water, and then throw the tub into the garden so that the garden is watered using that. So this is something that we can always do, and these practices can be promoted. Similarly, electricity. Yeah.
I just want to add that nowadays there is a increasing consciousness about wastage of water using RO, and more new designs are coming up. We are told that which waste less water, but all said and done, the wastage of water cannot be eliminated completely.
Electricity, yes, this is something that we all know. Switch off appliances when they are not in use. One thing that we need to be conscious about is the televisions and monitors, because those things are actually kept in sleep mode. When you, for example, use a remote and switch off the TV is on actually, and it uses about 3 to 5 watts of electricity on a continuous basis throughout the time when it is actually on, and that accumulated over periods of time is a huge amount of electricity. So we can always try to see, can we switch off the television when we are not actually using it for longer periods of time. Say, for example, morning when we walk out to office and nobody is there at home, you can just power off the TVs and come. Why unnecessarily have it consume a few watts throughout the day? Again, about resource conservation, we think that furniture made out of wood requires mature trees to be cut. Right? Timber is a big waste of trees. So we found this bamboo boards, which is there in the picture on the left, which are actually made from bamboo. Grows very fast, grows to maturity in a very short time, and then you can actually slit the bamboo into layers, and they can be molded together into bamboo boards. We actually got a pair of table and chair made for our son when he was small from that. And what actually happened was that it was twice as expensive as a normal table that we would have bought from the market. Why? Because the bamboo board itself was more expensive, and the people that make bamboo board furniture were very few. Bamboo furniture were very few, and they had to be paid a higher daily wage. So the labor charges on the furniture were much higher than the common furniture that you could buy off the shelf from the market. So people used to ask us, why are you doing this? What we thought was that it's actually an art which is rare, and there are few people, few artisans who are doing that, and somebody has to contribute to their livelihoods. If we only look at money and not look at artisans' livelihoods, then those are the artisans who will just leave that and eventually go to labor like pulling rickshaws or doing manual labor. And it's a unfortunate situation that is happening to most artisans in our villages, simply because we are looking for cheaper options, because Chinese made plastic items are much cheaper than what the artisans make in our villages for decorating our houses. right? So that is one thing that we had in our mind. So using these bamboo and cane furniture, the cane furniture, as you see in the picture on the right hand side, are quite elegant, and they can be comfortably used in the tropical weather. We don't need big cushions and things, and if we need, we can put small cushions that look aesthetic on top of these and use these furniture. So this is something that we make our choice typically. We prefer to use this kind of furniture to timber made furniture, however high quality the timber might well be. Similarly, eco-friendly options. We recently got our ancestral house renovated in my native place, and actually Sangeeta and I spent a lot of time trying to look for eco-friendly options for house constructions. People who do, for example, lorry baker kind of constructions, using compressed mud blocks and various things. What we found is that these resources are few and far in between, and therefore the house construction becomes slightly more expensive, 10 to 15% typically more expensive than otherwise. But it was well worth it. We actually searched and found an architect. We searched and found an engineer who could actually work together and make our house. The house now looks quite nice. It is still under construction and nearing completion, but at least it gives us a sense of satisfaction. Even though we spent a little bit more money on it, we thought that it's well worth it, because actually, number one, it's actually going to remain cool in summers because it's mud blocks, and it's made out of eco-friendly material with little requirements of steel, concrete, cement, and all of those things. So basically, the cost of material as well as labor goes slightly more, because the source of bricks you can source it from a local vendor, but the mud blocks have to come from a slightly more distance. So we actually had to spend more money. But if more of us start using them, then they will also become concurrent, and the material cost can become less. Only and labor cost is also higher because there are few people who actually work on that, and their cost is more. But all of this resource conservation choices are important for us. So the waste management is the next thing that I want to talk about. I'll let Sangeeta speak about that.
Okay, so I suppose, do we have another 5-7 minutes? Because I think we have crossed 1 hour. Pooja or Pinky?
Yes, ma'am, we have. You
Okay.
can continue.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so many years back, there were some people within IIT who were trying to propagate segregation of household waste at source itself. And we were very inspired by those efforts, and we decided to start doing it at our own level. And Ravi was at one stage NSS coordinator, and NSS bought a couple of composters, fancy looking composters, which are looking very attractive. And so they were placed at various places in the campus. And there was one which was placed at the end of our street, and we used to go and throw all our kitchen in that composter. Couple of years down the line, there was nobody to take care of those things, and finally, that was the one which was next to at the end of our street, was shifted to our backyard, and ultimately, we have continued to use it even now. So at this stage, when in the whole campus, the segregated waste is being collected, and the composts are being prepared by Chintan, we do not give our kitchen waste. We still continue to prepare our own compost in our backyard. And similarly, whatever recyclables are there, they don't get soiled, and hence their value is maintained, and that gets passed on to the kabadiwala. And also, we have been very conscious about not throwing away things which can be repaired with little care and can be reused further. So whether it is a bicycle or shoes or clothes or many other appliances, we have always tried to, we've tried to find shops which repair the various items, and always go for repair and extension of their life to the extent possible. So coming to the social environment aspect, so what happened is that um, we find that particularly in the elite circles, people are considering the so-called support system more of a nuisance. That oh, it's so difficult to manage the maid. Essentially, we would rather have a dishwasher or have a small robot to clean our house, because then we don't have to bother about all the problems that the maids will bring in. So our viewpoint has been completely different. So we felt that uh, we have to live in we are in an interconnected universe, and it is actually, if we have a little more resources than a certain section of the society, then this is one of the ways in which we can share our resources. So they also, everybody needs a livelihood. So if our maids, our mali, whether it's presswala, drivers, rickshaw pullers, postman, shopkeepers, whatever we may talk about, if we, by our choice, the choices that we make, we are able to support their livelihood, it is a small contribution to our social environment, and it's a source of satisfaction for us. And we have always found that these people have been a big support for us and given back much more than we ever expected from them. So this is something which has been a very satisfying experience. I will ask Ravi to elaborate on this.
Yeah, in fact, the COVID time was a time where there was an opportunity for us to actually express what we felt for them. So during the time of COVID, actually we, for example, continued to pay our maids, Mali or Presswala, the amount of money that otherwise they would have earned from us in the way of some kind of a subsistence allowance for them. So that even when there was a lockdown and there was no other income for them, they at least had some steady source of income from our sides. And that is something that has won their hearts. And when they came back, they redoubled uh, their sincerity at work for us. And now they are more like family members than maids or malis or presswali. So there is so much of mutual trust. We have never been we have never had to worry that if we keep money or things lying around in the house, they'll get stolen or things of that kind. With this kind of maids and people that are moving around in the house, in fact, they are protectors for our house rather than people who might want to take things away from us in the house. That's the thing that we have found always also with, for example, taxi drivers, because we don't have a car of our own. Every time we go, we call a couple of taxi wallahs on a regular basis. So they have also become more like our family members, because, for example, the same taxi driver who brought us home when our son was born, now actually took him from home to airport when he left for his higher studies abroad. So 20 years, 25 years, relationships between people, it actually makes you feel really good. I mean, they become an important part of your social environment, your life, and the nurturing a relationship with them actually keeps our environment very, very healthy. This is what I wanted to add to what Sangeeta said. So we'll just stop at this, saying that these are a few anecdotes from our lives where we tried to do whatever we understood as friendly with the surroundings. And if there are any questions, we'll be very happy to answer.
Of course, there's much more than one can do. These are some small efforts.
Thank you, Professor Kohli and Professor Ravi, for sharing the various mitigation strategies that has been followed by you to reduce environmental damage. And at the same time, you have shared how to be more responsible socially. So I'm sure that the listeners are highly motivated by your environment-friendly lifestyle. Thank you so much for sparing out your valuable time. And now we can take a few questions that have been posted by our viewers on YouTube. Pinky, can you please share the questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, please do so.
Our first question is, what inspired you both to live this kind of lifestyle?
In fact, yesterday I was thinking that we should acknowledge our mentors, and in the flow of things, we missed doing that. And I'm really happy that that question came in. So I would personally say that we met when we were already, past 25 or so. So already some kind of foundation had been laid. So for me personally, my teachers, particularly Professor P.L. Dhar, Professor R.R. God, they have been my mentors and our role models who essentially sensitized us when I was a student at IIT Delhi. They sensitized the students towards the need for being more sensitive to the environment, to be more responsible towards our surroundings, to our society. So that was something which struck a very strong chord with me. And I thought I really want to live a life which is commensurate with that. And one has just made an effort towards that. I think Ravi has to say his part.
Yeah, so I, have been part of, like Sangeeta also, part of a middle class, sort of lower middle class family, which was trying to, make ends meet with a single salary. And, by the 20th of the month, the salary would be exhausted. So struggling. So this is something that was the kind of family that we grew up in. So simplicity was part of the family value. And when I completed my PhD from IISc and went to Europe for a postdoc stint of about 2.5 years, the kind of affluence, the kind of glitz that I saw there, instead of attracting me, actually made me shrink within me. Saying that, how can we do this? How can we actually do this? So because I was brought up in a culture or a home family value of using the minimum resources for doing anything. And here is a place where the resources were just tampered on, and it actually made me feel that when I go back to my country, I will need to tell the people that this is not what you should be doing, because that is what is attracting everybody, and for whatever reasons. So this is something that was there in me all the time. At one point in time, I said, I'm going to quit everything and go back to the village and become a school teacher. This is what I thought when I was doing a postdoc. Then I thought that maybe I'm being emotional and overreacting, but can I not do it in my own environment? So I looked for a teaching position in IITs. That is what I was in my mind all the time. So I eventually joined IIT Bombay and then moved to IIT Delhi. I was always looking for opportunities to share this with students and try and see if that can be done. So in that sense, then Professor Gaur and Professor Dhar actually involved us in teaching the course of science and humanism that they used to teach for students. So we got involved and then started interacting with students. And actually then after that, students were our inspiration, and we just got forward with that. So we were inspirations for each other throughout, and then the students have been our inspirations. That's what it is. But thanks everything to, number one, our own family values, and number two, Professor P.L. Dhar and Professor R.R.
I also come from a very humble background at one point of time when resources were very limited, just as Ravi. And so we were able to appreciate the kinds of things that our teachers told us. And so everything fell in place, and it was natural for us to take this course. I hope that
Yeah,
answers that.
at least this is clear that on such matters, we never fought with each other.
Absolutely not. Any other question?
Pinky, are there any more questions?
Thank you. The second question is that, what is an energy footprint and how does it impact the environment?
Okay. So the energy footprint is a term that is used to see what is the influence that the energy that a particular individual or a particular society or a particular country consumes on the environment. So, for example, if I have a lifestyle in which I travel by air 3 times in a week, I go by car long distances driving, I have, so the amount of energy that I'm consuming is so much that I leave a large footprint on the environment. So it basically is calculated using some formula. There are, if you can Google energy footprint calculation, there are online calculators available for energy footprint. So it asks you a few questions, and on the basis of that, it can calculate and tell you what your energy footprint is. So those calculators are available online. So basically, energy footprint is basically the amount of impact that we leave on the environment because of the kind of energy that we consume.
I also say it in the form of carbon footprint, because carbon is, so that is more in terms of the pollution levels, because global warming is
As well as the carbon consumption levels. Yeah, how much carbon we emit into the atmosphere.
Any other question?
Okay, sir. It was really inspiring, sir, that you take bicycle to commute in the campus and you do not have AC at your home. You inspire us to do the same and skip the stereotype mentality. But now we cannot see more questions on YouTube. So I would like
Can't hear, Pinky.
On behalf of RCI IIT Delhi, I wholeheartedly thank you, Professor Ravi and Professor Kohli, for sparing out time from your busy schedule. So there are no more questions. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. In fact, initially we thought, what are we going to do with this opportunity? But then later we thought that we also needed to put our thoughts together on this, so that, you know, later if we need to share it with other people, then we'll need to have something together. So this helped us a lot.
Yeah, before this, we never thought of sharing it in this form. We were just doing things, whatever. We thought, okay, we have to live our life like this, but we never thought it can be shared in a structured manner with anybody else. So it was a good opportunity. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Namaskar.
Namaste.